The sequester prompted this release of inmates in a number of different states. The White House said they didn't order this. This is how Jay Carney responded to questions.
This was a decision made by career officials at ICE without any input from the White House as a result of fiscal uncertainty over the continuing resolution as well as possible sequestration. All of these individuals remain in removal proceedings.
Possible that some of them might not be brought back in.
Well, again, I would refer you to ICE. I don't think this is a conversation that I can help you with in the specifics.
Okay, with that, we'll bring in our panel. Steve Hayes, senior writer for the Weekly Standard, Mara Liasson, national political correspondent of National Public Radio, and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. Okay, Steve, thoughts?
Well, it was certainly an interesting day. I mean, the White House running as fast and as far as they can away from the claim that that came because of the sequester and blaming it, as you saw, on career officials. Look, I think we may be reaching a point in this whole debate where things are turning against the White House pretty quickly. You've had a prominent piece in the Washington Post today suggesting that Education Secretary Arne Duncan wasn't being honest when he said that teachers were getting pink slips all across the country when he was pressed on that. And when the Post's Karen Tumulty and others investigated it, turns out it basically just wasn't true. And they wrote a piece that suggests that some of the claims made by the White House are being hyped. You had the New York Times today write a story in which they wondered whether the president was going to emerge as the president who cried wolf. You have Bob Woodward not only challenging the claims of the administration, but saying, in effect, the White House is threatening to come after me, and saying that the president would be disappointed if he knew that this was happening. This feels like it's spinning out of control for the White House here, and if this is the beginning of a longer analysis of what exactly these cuts do, and we know that they're going to be sort of gradually introduced, does the White House just lose any remaining credibility it has on this question of spending going into a long and significant debate on budgets? You're going to have the House Republican budget next month, you're going to have the Senate Democratic budget next month, and the White House budget next month. Not good timing if this does in fact turn.
Mara, on this specific story of the release, you had the White House and ICE officials saying that this is a supervised release, and the Arizona sheriff responding to that possibility.
This idea of supervised release is laughable. These are all people who are multiple border crossers. They could never stop them crossing an international border. How on earth are they going to provide supervised release and supervision over these criminals?
Mark.
Well, first of all, this could be an argument over the release of any illegal immigrants who were detained. However, I think the big question is, the charge against the White House is they're doing this to make the sequester look worse than it really is. And I don't think, based on what we know about how this happened, that there was some kind of a strategy where ICE was told to release them in order to do that. However, there will be plenty of stories like this, and the Republican strategy during the sequester is to point out at every time how a certain cut didn't have to be made, how instead of doing X, the president could have done Y. And that's what Republicans are going to have to prove, that he had the flexibility, or he could have made a choice to do something that was less onerous or made more sense. And the White House is saying our hands are completely tied. We have to cut a certain percentage of every single program completely across the board. So I think we're going to see this as the sequester unfolds. And the big question, you mentioned all those budgets going on the table in April. The big question is, do enough Americans feel so much pain because of these cuts that they're going to demand that something change? Or will this appear to be exaggerated by the White House, not so terrible, and then we go forward?
Well, the other thing is, and it's been charged by several Republicans up on the Hill, that this is political tied to the immigration issue. And it's tied to the politics of immigration.
Well, if it is, I think it isn't really smart, because a lot of people will disagree on what you do about the 11 million illegal aliens in the country, but I don't think anybody wants to empty the prisons of people who jump the border and are being held, and we don't really know how they're going to act. I think it's laughable to assume they're all going to show up under this alternate status, and act like good citizens. Here are people who on multiple occasions have crossed the border, which means every time they've been deported across into Mexico, they tried again, and now that they are in the U.S. and released, the idea is they're going to show up and allow themselves to be rearrested. I think that's highly unlikely. But I think the major issue here isn't only will there be a lot of pain and disruption, but how will be the reaction of American people? My argument would be that people have a sense that the government is immensely wasteful, that they've heard about the GAO conference in Vegas, where you had the guy in the hot tub and the martini. They have an instinctive knowledge of what happens when you go to get your driver's license. It isn't as if everybody is, acting snappily, as in Jiffy Lube. It's a whole different proposition. People have this notion that if you're closing essential services, there has got to be a lot of bad faith in that, and that you are deliberately doing that, whereas you've had a lot of choices. So I'm not sure it will translate immediately against the Republicans. I think it could actually redound against the administration if people imagine, as in this case, that they could be acting in bad faith and deliberately making things really bad.
Okay, next up, one Democrat says belts are already tightening, but does that line up with the facts? Plus, we'll take one of your tweets on the other side of the break.
This program is brought to you by the most recommended, most preferred, and most studied multivitamin brand, Centrum.
My wife takes Centrum Silver. I've been on the fence about it. Then I read an article about a study that looked at the long-term health benefits of taking multivitamins. They used Centrum Silver for the study, so I guess my wife was right.
Centrum, always your most complete.
I have a cold, and I took NyQuil, but I'm still stubbed up.
Truth is, NyQuil doesn't unstuff your nose.
What?
Alka-Seltzer Plus Liquid Gel speeds relief to your worst cold symptoms, plus has a decongestant for your stuffy nose.
Thanks.
That's the cold truth.
Attention investors. The Wall Street Journal reports fraudulent brokers and financial firms were fined $68 million in 2012. You may be a victim of investment misconduct. Tax season is a great time to review your investments and learn if you may be entitled to compensation. Call our investment fraud hotline for a free confidential legal consultation at 1-800-941-0471. If you have losses due to broker misconduct, Sokoloff Law may be able to recover some or all of your money. Call 1-800-941-0471.